Hello, my friends. Catherine here. As it might be obvious, and once again, zhuzhed, just had a very exciting adventure getting from Churchill to Leechburg on back roads. That was fun. So anyway, I apologize for the echo. It's just a side effect of the space that I'm in right now. Wanted to take a couple minutes today to share with you my problem with how Yin Yoga is currently being defined. And I want to clarify that when I say problem, I'm talking about like how would you get through a maze, or how would you build a skyscraper? I'm not talking about problem like something's wrong and it needs to be fixed. So I want to make that distinction. And I think that the current definition of Yin Yoga is limiting and potentially, because of that limitation, I think we're losing out on some big opportunities. So right now, as I understand it, the definition of Yin Yoga is floor postures that are held for long periods of time, right? So up to 10 minutes, with the intention of appropriately stressing joints and isolating connective tissue so that everybody feels better and life is great. And 100% pretty much of all of the resources I have found on Yin Yoga that have been published for Westerners at least contextualize it in a Vedic moment. So just give me a second here, okay? So, because I'm not working from notes, I'm just thinking. Yin is a Taoist term. Taoism comes from China. Yin as a concept is considered within relationship to Yang, and the two get parsed out as feminine and masculine, feeling and thinking, soft and hard. It's a quality. And a thing is only yin because of the context in which it occurs. So it's about 75 degrees out right now where I am, and is that yin or yang? I don't know. Depends on where and when I am. If it's 75 degrees on the South Pole, that's pretty darn yang. 75 degrees at the equator may not be. Yoga and the Vedic stuff, so power yoga, the Ghosh lineage, anything that comes from Krishnacharya, going back to the texts of Patanjali, all of that stuff comes from India. And the postures that we practice are part of a larger system that is not Chinese or Taoist. Tao says that one of the reasons to practice a thing is to come into balance within oneself and within one's world or community. So from a physical sense, I guess you could say that Yin Yoga, getting on the floor and staying still, balances Yang activities like driving and running and building buildings. But that doesn't necessarily cultivate yin from a Taoist perspective. From a Taoist perspective, to cultivate yin, you would have to look at the moment that you're in and if and how something's out of balance. And so where my heart starts to go like, ugh, and I get nervous is, and I'm not thinking of anything in particular, these are thoughts that are in the world. Yin Yoga is great because I can do a 10-minute frog. And I think to myself, which body is that good for? Like, in what context is it healing and balancing to be in frog for 10 minutes? I mean, I'm like, really, if somebody has an answer to that, I would like to know it. Because if a body has the mobility to hold that pose for 10 minutes, or one is already hypermobile, so it's pretty available, then wouldn't you want to balance that with strengthening rather than increasing mobility? I have that thought. And then I have the thought, like, stillness can't be the only way to balance yang. In fact, in Taoism, there's a set of practices called Tao Yin, which exist to cultivate yin. There's already Yin Yoga. And P.S., it's moving. One moves. It kind of looks a little bit like Tai Chi and like rolling around on the floor like a baby. And the movements tend to be spirals, and there's some bouncing. So in one sense, defining yin as only ever being still and on the floor is limiting, because we're erasing the potential and the possibility of balancing yang with movement, which you really can actually do. So that's one part of the puzzle. Another part of the puzzle for me is conflating energy systems. So in the Vedic stuff, traditions, or however you label it, that come from India, the energy centers in the body are called chakras, or chakras. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And they make a lovely rainbow up the spine, and they spin like they're vortices. They're very active, and so they're actually yang in nature, right? Because they're moving. And one works, as I understand it, from the base up to raise energy and move it through the spine, through the central channel. Tao says, oh, no. That is way too warming. And particularly if you're looking at a yin moment in Tao, you would actually move from yang to yin. You would go from top down. Plus, Taoism doesn't have chakras. Taoism has dantians, and a dantian is intrinsically different than a chakra. A dantian is like it's like a little cup, little open space within you that you can put things in and do stuff with. So the pagan parallel would be like inner cauldrons. And in esoteric Taoist practices, one works to balance these three main energy centers: the belly, the heart, and the head. So another, turn of the maze, there's amazing material and so much written about Yin Yoga. And then these writers start talking about energy, and they talk about chakras. And I think to myself, well, what about dantians? There's already something there in the tradition from China. So the conflation of metaphor. Sequencing. From a sequencing perspective, from a Taoist perspective, you would look at the 5 elements and the restriction and generation cycles, the ways that the elements expand and contract, and work from heat to cool. So you would basically go from metal, or from fire to metal. And I would need a picture to show you why. And hey, maybe someday you'll come to one of my trainings and we'll have a deeper conversation about it. But you move to yin. You allow for movement to occur and to calm so that you can get to that place of space. And then we put people in Yin Yoga classes, and I'm saying we, because I am one of us, and I'm also not saying it's everybody, and I'm saying that I have had the experience of walking into a room and like right off the bat, I'm in a split for 5 or 10 minutes, walking through the door. Like, dude, I just drove here and fought my way to the Goblin City and like had to figure everything out, and it's still up in my head, and now I'm in a split, like, whoa, how is that balancing? And again, how is a 10-minute split really good for most bodies? So there's a sequencing question that I would love us to be talking about. And there's also a claim that in Yin Yoga that you can isolate connective tissue. And so I used to say it, and I just figured it was true because everybody was saying it, and I'm a person who sometimes thinks a thing is true because everybody says it. When I started writing teacher trainings, I started doing research. And my main question was, how would you actually isolate connective tissue? Because connection implies connection. Like, wouldn't it be bad to separate a ligament from the fascial capsule? Like, how is that helping? And so I did some research, and I found Tom Myers, who's one of the guys, and he has really cool anatomy. And wouldn't you know, he actually, in everything that I've been able to find, doesn't say that you can isolate connective tissue. He also says, if you want to benefit connective tissue, if you want to help the myofascial web, what do? Well, guess what you do? You move. Bouncing and whole body stretching and gyration and movement helps fascia. But we're just going to sit people on the floor and tell them to stay still for 3 to 5 minutes at a time because that's going to help their connective tissue. Like, where does that come from? Are those my problems? I think those are my problems, or my questions. I would love for us all, whatever the yin people are, and movement people, and anatomy people, to be in a larger conversation about balance when it comes to bodies, rather than prescriptions, which I understand is very ironic because the first form I ever taught is Bikram, which is highly prescriptive. That aside, I don't know, guys. The more I work with people, and especially the more I work with people who are healing from trauma, emotional or physical, and people who live with chronic pain, and my practice is getting more and more focused in that way, the more I'm finding that the way to that open relaxation is through movement. So I've stopped calling anything that I teach Yin Yoga. I now call it Relax and Restore. I still, if I'm teaching from that perspective, I'm teaching from a Taoist perspective, and I'm going to draw from that. I don't combine, although it is very fun sometimes to do like a power yoga standing series and then a yin floor series, which brings me to my next problem, my next question, the next curve. If there's data, like actual research, that shows that static stretching has a negative impact on a body if you do it before athletic movement, before something like running or jogging or power yoga, why is there a thing in the world that has people doing like 45 minutes of yin yoga before 45 minutes of power yoga? I mean, at a minimum, wouldn't you know, and me being one, like, don't you know that those long static stretches destabilize the joints? So let's destabilize the shoulders and the pelvis before we put people into chaturanga and warrior poses. Like, huh? I don't get it, guys. I really don't get it. There's one other thing I found. Oh, the French guys, or they're Germans.de, pardon me. What's his name? Robert Schleip. I think that's how you pronounce it. And he, I'm just looking at an article called Training Principles for Fascial Connective Tissues, Scientific Foundation and Suggested Practical Applications. Thankfully, it was translated into English because I haven't read German since high school. And wouldn't you know, the findings especially with the catapult mechanism, the findings are to move, to load the stretches in a certain way, to swing and get the whole body involved. So here's actual science about fascia, but we're just going to put people on the floor and tell them to sit still for 5 minutes. I don't have an answer. I'm not looking to have an argument. I'm genuinely curious. And I mean, I know the origin story of Sarah Powers, I think is her name, going to a Paul Grilly workshop and identifying the floor stuff as yin, and thus it all began. And there's a wealth of information and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years of application behind that which is yin that seems to be missing from that which we teach as yin. So it's becoming like an integrity thing for me. And clearly I need to start writing. I'm really curious to learn from other people who are teaching this, who maybe are finding some of the same stickiness that I'm finding, but also if we could have a compassionate disagreement. I'm wildly interested to know why it is best in yin to have people sit still for that long and in a stressed position. Some other day I will tell you why I think that's a horrible idea for people who are healing from trauma. But today I just want to know why, with all this stuff that's coming out about fascia and how to help fascia and how to heal fascia, if we're still claiming that Yin Yoga helps fascia, why aren't we moving? So that's me on a Friday afternoon asking questions, and I'm interested to know what your responses are. I'll put links to the 2 articles that I referenced here in the comments, and I'll put some names for some Taoist texts that you can look for for some of these more esoteric practices if you're so interested. And I hope everybody is having a great day. Guess what I'm about to do? I'm about to teach Yin Yoga. And guess what we're going to do before we sit still? We're going to move. So that is me glistening on a Friday in lovely Leechburg, Pennsylvania. And I hope you're all well. Bye.